Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the UK Connection. We're laughing already. We haven't even started. It's going to be one of those episodes. Of course, with me, as always, my colleagues, Mr. Simon Bray and Mr. Steven Reid. What's happening, gentlemen?
Oh, it would appear lots of things in Simon's gaff.
So everything's all right with the world.
Why don't we just forget talking about the albums today? Let's just get right to the beer, right? Because, it's supposed to be AOR day. But you know what? Before we start all that, Simon's going to kick us off with beer selections of the day.
Your selections. Yes, that's right. As you know, 2 minutes ago, I had one beer, just the one beer. And I had a massive panic because I couldn't find any more. And this beer, which I'm going to try in this very tankard, oh, yeah, look at that, is, oh, holy shit, Botanicalist. It's a gin and tonic IPA.
What?
I'm now going to list the things in the world that I hate the most. Led Zeppelin. IPA. I like IPA, but gin and tonic.
I don't like gin and tonic.
Don't like gin and tonic. No, I really don't like gin and tonic.
Too.
But just in case it goes tits up, chaps. As you know, Mrs. Simon came in and she found some more beer just in case I don't like it. And equally, as you know, when I couldn't find any beer, she just simply looked over there and came up with a bag of beer. At least 2 per album. So, yeah, the crowd's going to go on. I'm going to pour the Botanicalist Gin and Tonic IPA. Get back to you really soon with some facial expressions.
Yeah, I want to see what that looks like, Simon, because it does. I mean, I like G&T, I like IPA. That sounds, I'll quote you from just before we hit record on the show, hideous. It sounds hideous.
Well, you're not going to
Anyway,
see what it looks like because it's in a tankard. But here we go.
Prop fail.
Fucking cool tankard.
That is, to be fair, it's a very cool.
Yes.
So also, I've got a mild out Yorkshire mild. This is going to be good. I do like a nice pint of mild because I was born in the 1800s. That's what I like. I'm going to try
addressing that gin and tonic beer. That is off camera. That is going to be tossed down the sink, right? I'm sure.
I'm going to go with it.
Yeah. I mean, it was nearly splattered across the camera.
I go with it when I get to the 3rd album.
Okay.
Oh, I feel bad for having a beer that I like. I've got an Abernite brewery. Yes, we're back there again, and I've got a Doppelbock, which I've shown on the show before. 7%. It's fantastic, and it's possibly the best word in the world to say Doppelbock. So I'm quite happy with that. So there you go. And in my tankard that you can see through, it looks like this.
Yeah. So he's got the wonderful goats and whatnot on front of his. I've got Baby Elephant from the Rushing Duck Brewery in Chester, New York.
Like it.
It's a light and hazy session IPA, 4.4% ABV, and it kind of looks like this. I have it in my wonderful Zeus glass. Zeus is another local brewery in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Nice.
Yes, and this is light and fruity and piney and quite delicious.
I'm pleased for you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. This is really good. This is a great summer beer.
Hope you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Managed to drink it without splurting it everywhere, so that's obviously a good thing.
Yes. So, all right. Now that we got that out of the way, well, we'll have more, I'm sure, excitement relating to the cervezas throughout the episode. It's AOR Melodic Rock Day once again here on the UK Connection. We've got 3 albums that have been chosen. One somewhat of a classic, one kind of obscure, and the third, they did an AOR album? I guess so, right? So who wants to kick off this episode here and start throwing out loads of information that will just...
Do you want me to be the boring guy that does the information?
Well, none of these are my fault either, so I'm not taking the shit for any of this.
Okay, so I am prop light today, I have to say. Okay, so this is the debut album from Alias. Okay, so Alias were a Canadian band formed in 1988 in Toronto. They were classed as something of a supergroup. I chose this as the classic, and it's only now that I really went and did some research that it doesn't really fit that bill in the terms that we've been using it, a massive seller and all that kind of stuff. However, we'll get there. So the lineup consisted of two guys called, well, one called Freddie Churchy or Kirchy, don't quite know which way you go with that, on vocals and keyboards, and Stephen DeMarchi on guitars. Now, this pair had already been in a band together called Sheriff. Okay, so they would prove in some sense, with both acts, I would suggest, that even being hugely successful doesn't guarantee success, because both of those bands, in one term or another, really were quite big for a nanosecond. So Sheriff had one big hit, When I'm With You, which was in Canada. Canada in 1983 reached number 8 in the charts. But just as they were going to tour the US, they put the single out. It started to get a bit of attention. And for whatever reason, there wasn't enough of it pressed. So all stalled, things fell apart, the band split. And then oddly, it was picked up for radio play in the US in 1988. So some 5 years later, after Sheriff had folded, they found themselves at number 1 in the Billboard charts. So at that point, there was an effort to put Sheriff back together. Okay, so Churchy and DeMarchi were keen, but the other guys weren't. So instead, they teamed up with Roger Fisher on guitar, Steve Fossen on bass, and Michael DeRosier on drums, who all had appeared on the first 4 studio albums by Heart, no less. Fossen and DeRosier, they also stuck about for a bit longer than that. And DeRosier can also be found on the Orion the Hunter album as well, which would fit nicely on this show too. So the self-titled Alias album was produced by Rick Nair and Churchy and DeMarchi, was released on June the 18th, 1990 through Capitol, but it only dented the charts at number 114 in the US. Although the single, More Than Words Can Say, did hit the top spot in Canada and reached number 2 in the US. And Waiting for Love then got to number 4 in Canada, number 13 in America. And then, as we all know, grunge exploded, and the band were very soon yesterday's news. However, fans did bootleg some of the stuff they had recorded in the meantime. It all got out there. And an unofficial second album was released, which then became official in 2009, called Never Say Never. And nobody did. It never got any impact whatsoever, basically. And rather bizarrely, DeMarchi went on to work with the Cranberries. Okay, and Freddie Churchy released a couple of decent solo albums, which I have, and they're both quite good. And that is Alias.
Cool. All right. So we're just going to get some thoughts on that Alias album, self-titled from 1990. Simon, what think you of Alias?
Well, now that I've dug it out, and it's right at the back of my cupboard, I'm excited by that picture. Look at that. You know it makes sense. However, I love this record.
Time, right?
I really do enjoy this record. It's one. When you suggested it, I thought that's going to be in the not classic album part, and then it was in the classic album part. And I thought, I am the only person I know that's ever heard this record, and now I'm talking to the only other 2 people I know. And then when you do the research, as Stephen clearly has, you see that it's actually sold a few copies, and you think, well, at least we can vaguely fit it into the paradigm that we chose for ourselves. It's not exactly foreigner 4 in that situation, is it, in terms of copies sold? But it's a really good record. It's very, very good. I like practically everything on it. I really, really like the drumming on it. It's almost as if he, starting from the start of Say What I Want to Say, it's almost as if he went, oh, cymbals. Gonna hit those motherfuckers all the time, all the way through. And that is something that I can always get down with, because, timekeeping is always important, isn't it? That's why I was slightly late this evening. So, yeah, to me, much of it reminds me of The Storm, which we did the other week. Yeah, that kind of mid-range kind of melodic rock. It doesn't necessarily all sound like Journey, which is really good because too much, particularly modern, Stephen. I've been reading what you say on Twitter. Too much modern melodic rock, just yeah, yeah. It's wimpy as fuck in places, you know. And all good melodic rock is really quite wimpy, and it definitely is. Occasionally, it's a bit funky, like The Power. You know, Waiting for Love is fantastic, really is. But you know, it's so limp-wristed and wimpy. It's untrue. It really is. You know. After the Love Is Gone is proper melodic rock, but without too many keyboards, which again I think afflicts too much melodic, modern rock. The song that I really don't get my shit together with is, in a massive surprise, because you know I like a nice ballad, is More Than Words Can Say. It's unusual for me, you know, but you can see why the MILF market would be down with it, wouldn't you? You know, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't really kind of work for me. One More Chance is just so super upbeat. And that's the great thing about this type of music. You know, even when they're talking about bad shit, have pity on a dying man. Yeah, great, fantastic. Yeah, it's just so uplifting. Almost like Jim Peterick wrote it, which he didn't. But he's got that kind of, hey, let's be really upbeat about absolutely everything. Oh, your family's died on a motorway accident, but it's great. Yeah, that sort of thing. It's a really good record. It's a really good record, and I am surprised that we've penciled. I actually think it is a classic. I think it's one of those records that I can sing from beginning to end. I still don't know anybody else that can. I assume you two chaps can, but I've never seen it out in the wild. The only place I've ever seen it is right at the back of my cupboard, which from where I dug it out today, I've been streaming it for the rest of the time, but I knew that I had a copy, so I thought I've got a show and tell. The show and tell I have, and I think it's a really excellent record. If you've never heard it, find it. If you're an AOR fan, you've never heard it, find it out. Find it now.
So yes, the fact that this is down as a classic is kind of my fault. Let's say kind of. It's my fault because in my world, there's no kind of, yeah. Yeah, it was me. I don't know. In my world, this was big. I mean, I bought it clearly, and I liked it enough that yes, nobody else can find it, but I have 2 copies of it. So yeah, I like it. But yeah, to put it in perspective, when I mentioned to a friend of mine that we were doing this show, he was like, is that the album that's got, and he named the first 3 or 4 songs on the album, and I was like, yes, that's the one. He said, well, we were on holiday in Canada as a family when this was released, and his big brother bought it on cassette, and they listened to it in the car every day. It was the soundtrack to that, and I think the tape got lost or broken or whatever, and he's never been able to find it. So I might have missed the mark on the classic part, other than the fact it's really good. It did go gold in the US, and the fact that it kind of trickled away outside the top 100 just shows you how many of these big black things people were buying at the time with the holes in the middle that you could put on a record player, because to get to number, what was it, 122 or something I said, and go gold, bonkers. But there you go. So yeah, we cover, I would suggest, quite a broad church of melodic rock in this show, but this to me is quintessential kind of end of period AOR. Just as things were about to burst, and just as the kind of scene was about to come to an end, the Alias debut to me is what it was all about. It's full of impassioned vocals. There's guitars that kind of go and then come back again. They're not there all the time. You get a great riff sometimes. Some of the guitar solos are really good, but it's not in your face. It's not a guitar-driven album. But as Simon mentioned, it's not all about the keyboards at the same time. But there are ballads of power. There's no getting away from that. In that sense, there's maybe 1 or 2 more ballads of power than we could possibly ever really need. But when you've got a great singer that can do that kind of thing, I can understand it. And if people have heard anything from this, it will be More Than Words Can Say. It's to me, I think it's a great power ballad. Yes, there are kind of better songs on the album. And it is maybe a little formulaic, even for the time. It does have all of those kind of tropes. I think it's really good. But Waiting for Love, for me, that was a song that should have been huge off this album. It combines that kind of 80s aesthetic to a kind of slightly tougher outlook. And the chorus is just fantastic. And then you get things like The Power. It's kind of, there's a more kind of jaunty, jangly guitar line. It wants to really be meatier and heavier than it is, but it's still a really good song. I like What to Do. It's got a really good bass line. After the Love Has Gone, that's a great little Foreigner ripoff. And then One More Chance, really, that could have been on the Shadow King album. That's a massive tick for me. We'll get to that album at some point on this. So yeah, it's maybe a little ballad heavy, you know, but DeMarchi is clearly an excellent guitarist. He's a good songwriter, and it might not be fashionable to say it. I really like this album. I think that if you like the kind of lighter end of Foreigner, you don't mind Bad English, and I like things like, say, Boulevard and Unruly Child, I think this will be right up your street. So yeah, apologies. It's not a classic in the sense of it sold 170 million albums, but it is a classic in the sense that, to me, it sums up what the AOR scene was when this album came out, which is just at the turn into the 90s when things were about to go, see you later, we're all going to stay at our shoes and wear really bad shirts.
Yeah, I think we call this a classic because, I mean, here in the, I can only talk about here, but here in the States, there was a bit of buzz about this band. You know, first of all, you got, Sheriff were really nothing here. I don't think I ever heard of Sheriff, obviously, before this band formed and you found out where these guys came from. But, the three guys from Heart, it's kind of a big deal, right? Roger Fisher is looked at, very fondly as a guitar player and from a beloved era of Heart. And, I will say More Than Words Can Say was a fairly big song here. The problem is, I think when this album hit 1990, and Steven, you kind of hinted at it, this kind of stuff was already falling out of favor. And I think that if this album had come out 3 to 5 years earlier, this would have done massive business. As it was, it did okay business. I will say, and I agree with Simon, I think More Than Words Can Say is one of the worst songs on the album. I don't understand why it was a big hit. There's so many better ballads that have come out, and quite frankly, there's better ballads on this album. I mean, I think Waiting for Love is a way better song. And it's funny, when I was reading, and I own this, I didn't pull it out because it's buried in my closet, but I do. I did not buy this when it first came out. I actually was really not into this sort of stuff around 1990. And it wasn't until many years later that I bought this on CD because, well, I started to appreciate this kind of music all the more later on. This album is interesting for me. I think there's some highs on this album, and then there's some low stuff on this album for me. I find it overall very spotty. What I like on it, I really like. What I don't care for, I don't care for all that much. I find the rockers really good. A couple of the ballads are okay. A couple of the ballads are really soft and just really wimpy. Simon said it perfectly. And there's some stuff here that, like What to Do kind of reminds me of more upbeat rock and Survivor. There's a couple songs that remind me of, like Foreigner, Journey Light, that sort of thing. The vocals are outstanding. Man, I wish there was more guitar. I find there's lots of synths on here, and you got two very capable players here, and I'm just kind of like, if you never told me that Roger Fisher was on this album, you wouldn't know, right? I keep wanting to hear some of the Guitar Hero stuff that he did with Heart, and it's really not on this album. But I think that what is good on this album is really good. It's a shame they kind of didn't really do much after this at all. Basically just imploded. But I think that this is another perfect example. You mentioned the Shadow King album too. If that would have come out a couple of years earlier, I think that would have done big business. I think this album in 1986, maybe 87 still, even 88, this is a platinum record right here. Plus. And as it is, I just think by 1990, people have kind of already moved on from this type of stuff into other things. We know what those other things were. And it's kind of a shame because I think there's a lot of talent in this band. I think that had they stayed together and maybe kind of worked on what they were doing here, official album number 2 might have been actually really, really good. I've never heard the recordings that they worked on, you know, that unofficial second album. I haven't heard that, so I can't really say anything about it, but I like some of this. I don't like part of it as well. So it's a good album. I don't think it's a great album, though. I think this band had it in them to be great. I just don't think that they ever kind of got there.
I think you might like what was meant to be the second album, which has only the 2 main guys and then a whole group of different players on it. I think you might like some of it more. It's spotty. The songs are not so strong, but it's heavier. It's much more guitar driven. And it would have been an interesting way for them to go. It's not brilliant, has to be said, but I do like it. But if you could kind of put the songwriting of the debut with the style of what was clearly meant to be coming next, because as I say, I mean, this is just a CDR that was nice to trawl through all these sites that used to put up stuff that was never released and people had demos and things kicking about. So this was just downloaded off the internet. And then they did, because there was so many people coming up and asking them to sign things at shows. Steve DeMarchi was at Cranberry shows and people were bringing up this or something along these lines and going, "Can you sign that?" And he was going, "What is this?" "Well, that's your second album." "Don't have a second album." So that's why this came out as Never Say Never. So whether that was really what the album was meant to be like, finished and various things, I mean, clearly they went and tidied it up and recorded it. It sounds really good, but it's not as strong as the debut, in my humble opinion.
All right.
Well,
I'll probably go back to the Sheriff album at some point and bring that round for this show, because it'd be interesting to contrast to compare. That's sitting by me somewhere as well.
Yeah.
What I would say about this album, I think Pete kind of touched on it. If it reminds me of any other band and any other album, it's Survivor and Too Hot to Sleep. They would like, I think they'd like to be just a little bit tougher. You know, you always got that thought that Survivor could be a little bit tougher than they were. They could be a rock just a little bit harder. And it's an album full of songs that you think, God, that could have been a hit. That could have been a hit. And like Too Hot to Sleep, it kind of roughly didn't really hit. Yeah. Although it clearly did, because it sold enough copies to go gold, didn't it? You know, so And yet you walk in the street. Heard of Alias? No.
No,
And again, you know, you live. I certainly live in a world, and I mentioned the Sex Pistols to somebody at work the other day, and she went, "Who?"
Wow. All righty.
Okay, we're living in a world of fetuses, friend. So,
you know, Simon, you mentioned the Storm before, and I think I had the same issues with the Storm album that I do with this album. There's some of it I really like, some of it I don't, and I think it's just it came a little too late, and it was lacking a little balls or something. I don't know. I find both albums have great hooks and great vocals, and I like parts of it and I don't like others. And I'm thinking, man, I just wish they kind of kicked it up a notch. But maybe that's just, you know, it was the time. That's kind of what they were doing. Everybody was searching for hits, right? Ballads, power ballads was still doing really good. You know, I mean, we still had what, you know, More Than Words and Wholehearted and To Be With You and all that kind of stuff. That was still happening around 1989, 90, 91, right? So it's like, I think that's a lot of these bands were just looking for those massive hits because they know that, you know, people gravitated towards them and the ladies gravitated towards them. So I don't know. But the rocker in me always kind of like can hear all this talent in these bands. I'm like, God, can we just get a little bit more? I don't know. It's just me. Anyway, on to the next one, right?
Okay. So yes, the second one is Duke. This is difficult to say, Peter. Why can you not have chosen something that's easier?
Duke Jupiter.
Duke Jupiter with Duke. Wow. Anyway, Duke Jupiter 1. So until Pete suggested this album for the show, I had never heard of this band. Not just the album, I had never heard of this band. This was completely new to me. So if at any point I am talking utter rubbish, well, that'll be pretty much normal. Okay, so this album was released in 1982 through Coast to Coast Records in the US and Epic in, I would guess, mainland Europe and Canada. I don't think it got released here at all from the little bit of digging that I did, but I may be wrong with that. So if you're ignorant like me, you would have presumed that this was their debut because they called it Duke Jupiter 1. But no, it's actually their fourth album from the 7 studio albums that they would release in total. And it rocketed in the US charts to number 204. I didn't know they even counted that low. I thought they got to 200, and after that, it was just like a dead heat. Nobody finished. But there you go. And the single I'll Drink to You did get to number 58, which is pretty respectable. And that was their highest ever chart single. So the band's first 3 albums were in a more kind of rock meets R&B kind of country style. I've sought them out on YouTube, and you can tell it's the same band, but not really. So I'm guessing that that's why this is Duke Jupiter 1. It kind of sees a slight change in style. Maybe not, maybe yes, I don't know. It was produced by Glenn Kolotkin, who is probably best known, I would guess, as an engineer on early Santana and Journey albums, although he did work with Joan Jett and also the Ramones in latter years. So the lineup for this album is Marshall James Styler on lead vocals and keyboards, Greg Walker, not Greg T. Walker, not to be confused here, on guitar and also lead vocals. There is George Barajas on bass, who sadly died, I think, actually during the recording of this album from a brain tumour. So Ricky Ellis is also credited with playing some bass on the album, and he seemed to be part of the band from there on in. And then a guy called David Corcoran on drums and also lead vocals, so about 3 proper out there singers. And the general rule of thumb on the album is if you wrote the song, you sang the song. That seems to be the way that it worked. So that's Duke Jupiter 1.
And their hit single "I'll Drink to You" was written for their fallen bandmate who passed away. So that's
okay. I did not know.
Yeah. Simon, what do you think of Duke Jupiter 1?
I'm a fan of Duke Jupiter 1. Now, what the good people out there in Sea of Tranquility Land don't realise, and probably won't from ever having watched, is that actually we plan sometimes quite a long way in advance, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Sometimes
we do.
Sometimes we plan about 8 seconds before we come on, but with this one, we've known about this one for quite a while, haven't we? Yeah. So I've been digging this.
Actually, I'd like to say that Simon asked for this one to be moved up the order.
I asked for it to be moved up the order because of the next.
I don't know why yet. I just want to throw that out there, though. You asked us to be moved up the order. You were keen to talk about this album.
I'm keen to talk about the next one. and this one, because I realize I've suddenly decided that I really like Duke Jupiter. They're awesome. They're right up my street. They really are. Again, this is not your classic melodic rock in that it sounds like Foreigner or Journey or Survivor or any of those, but it's got like tunes that once they bury their way into your head, you just think, oh my God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Why am I rocking in a motel room? You know, that sort of thing. There's absolute humor. And then you look and you think, well, it got to number 204. Maybe that's how many copies it sold. You know, wow, because it's so catchy and just such an interesting record. At times that I have no idea who wrote this because I haven't been able to hunt down a copy, but the opening song, Same Old Story, at one point when he actually says same old story, he sounds just like Bob Seger, and that's always a tick for me because I love your Uncle Bob. I just love everybody called Uncle Bob, don't I? It's just like I say, could you imagine Uncle Bob doing walking in a motel room? So good. Yeah, that is so ultra catchy. And then this is where I got really excited. I got to Don't You Look at Me Like That, because we all know where we've heard that one before, don't we? Just enlighten me, Stephen. Well, let me tell you, my friend, that Meatloaf did a version on Midnight of the Lost and Found, but he had this idea because Meat's got it going up here. Meat did it as a duet with Dale Crance Rossington.
Meat singing a duet? Never. No, never happened. Oh, never a thing. So he could sit and not sing? No.
With the white soul voice of Dale Crance Rossington, and it's got Gary Rossington on it as well. And this version's much better. But yeah, I thought, oh, I actually know that song, and it's an absolute winner. Slow down, slow, loud, and dirty is kind of ZZ toppy. It's kind of swampy. I like that. Baby, I Do. It's a cuckold song. I love it. If I can't be your number one, I'll be your number two. Get some self-respect, motherfucker. Really, you know what I'm saying? But again, wrapped up in this kind of, really happy tune. And that's the great thing about most melodic rock. Even when it's being sad, it's upbeat and makes you happy. And this record definitely makes me happy. Now for the controversial bit, I think this, yes, Jupiter, White Knuckle Ride is much more AOR-tastic. The keyboards really come out to play on this one. It's also this is a bit like Eliminator record. So hence, I really, really like this one. This is awesome. If you ever get the chance to see the video for Little Lady, it's fantastic. It's like a bunch of Tom Selleck's turn up and like hit on these women. It's really quite odd. Very, very odd. Very, very odd. Dressed up as cops. Very odd. Very good. But yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed digging into the dupe, as I now like to call them. I just made that up.
So it's funny because this was actually my pick, and I will agree with you, Simon, 100%. I believe and I have the one that you just showed. I think that was the one that came after this, maybe two after it.
Two after, yeah.
And it definitely is a little bit more melodic rock than this one. I picked this one because this was the kind of moderate hit, as we found out, not really much of a hit, but it had the hit single on it. So that's why I kind of picked this one. But yeah, the other one is a little bit more in this wheelhouse, although there is some stuff on this album that kind of fits as well.
There is. It just reminds us, does it not, that at the risk of being repetitive and boring, that melodic rock has gone down this pathway of you've got to sound a bit like Journey, big brick wall sound. Just in the past, lots of things fit into the genre. Now,
yeah.
If it's not written by Alessandro Del Vecchio, it kind of doesn't count, does it?
True.
So yeah.
True.
Yeah, I thank you, Peter, for this. A double thumbs up for introducing me to the dupe.
Cool.
I really like that somehow you managed to make the non-classic classic a classic by showing an album that got to number 206 as the underground classic. So this does work. In the context of this one individual show, suddenly it's all come together. So yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I had never heard of this band in my life. I don't know if they ever did anything over here. Is that a UK press of whichever album that is you've got there, Simon? Did you just buy that on the back of having this as an assignment?
It's on Morocco Records, which I've never heard of, which unbelievably is a subsidiary of Motown. Because they don't look like Stevie fucking Wonder, do they? No, they don't. They don't look like Diana Ross. No, they don't look like Marvin Gaye. They don't sound like. I have a strong suspicion that they had no idea what to do with the dupe.
So yeah, this was a voyage of discovery, and what a confusing voyage it is. Now, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have said, do you know what, this is AOR, this is melodic rock, and then you listen to it and you go, well, yeah, what else is it then? I mean, it's got a kind of southern rock heart, I would suggest. So, and I mean, the vocals from Marshall James Styler, I mean, what a name, and David Corcoran are fantastic, really, really good. I mean, even just the opener, I'll Drink to You, that could be anything. It's kind of southern. If you listen to the chorus, it's got a bit of 70s UK glam in there, which I just didn't anticipate at all. But the guitar solo is killer. It kind of plays the song out in that style that we've spoken about a few times. It kind of takes the song home. Really like that. And then we get to Rocking in a Motel Room. And yet, anyone that goes on the website, I've written a lot of reviews in my time, and I'm a great believer that you bring a lot of yourself into what you listen to. So I hear what I think about. And Rockin' in a Motel Room is the first of quite a few songs on this album that I can't help but think would have made perfect TV themes from the 70s. I had to remind myself that this album didn't come out in 1976. This was in 1982. This does not sound like a 1982 album to me at all. It's got a much older kind of feel and mood to it, the production to it. That's all a positive. I mean, I know that most of what we talk about in this show is more 80s centric. I really like the overall feel of this. Do you know, you've got some really good stuff on here. Like, is it called? You've got to love the wrong ones. There's a lot of convoluted kind of
Yeah, the titles
relations.
are wacky.
Well,
Yeah.
the right one comes along. Wise words.
Absolutely. I mean, if surely that was written by either Francis Rossi or Rick Parfitt for early 80s Status Quo, but then covered by the Georgia Satellites. It's really confusing, do you know? And you've got that chorus line. You've got to love the wrong ones till the right one comes along, as Simon's just said. I mean, that is a comedy line from a 70s TV theme. That is surely the bit they're going to sing over and over and over as people walk across the screen and go, it's just got that feel about it, which works for me. Absolutely works for me. Do you know? I mean, you've got Baby I Do. If you can't find someone to love you, baby, I do. If you can't find someone to love you, I'll be your number two. I mean, if Dennis Waterman was born in America, he would be writing and singing these theme tunes because that's exactly what it's like. I mean, Baby I Do, it has to be the follow-up to I Could Be So Good For You. It's got that whole kind of feel. It's very visual. But then you get to, is it Don't Look At Me Like That? And you listen to that piano at the start. Go and listen to the Hill Street Blues theme tune and listen to this song and discover that it's the same melody line. It is absolutely 100%. And I even checked to see which one was done first. I'm sorry, this is a rip-off. Okay. It's a really good rip-off, and it is taken somewhere else. But it's taken it this strange world where something like Smokey teamed up with Rod Stewart. It's very odd, really odd. But I mean, Marshall is such a good singer, really, really good. And it keeps on giving. This album keeps on giving. Don't You Walk That Way? I mean, it's almost like somebody said, would you like to write a reply to Walk This Way by Aerosmith? I mean, they don't sound exactly the same, but when you get to the chorus and they go, walk this way, you're like, I may have heard this before, but they don't walk that way, but we do walk this way. Do you know? But it's got a gritty riff, it's got a great guitar solo, it's got some vocoder. I'm all in here. And it was written by Vanda and Young. How many boxes can we tick on one album? It just makes all the sense and no sense. But after this album is finished playing, the song that I'm left with is Whoa, a Jana Rock and Roll Band. That is just so good. It is just so good. David Corpton's vocals are fantastic. He's a storyteller and it's so infectious. It's love it, yes. And it's funny, I did go and dig deeper after listening to this, and I agree. White Knuckle Ride, that to me is the AOR album out of this catalogue. I'm delighted that you chose to speak about Duke Jupiter 1, Pete, because this has been wow.
Do you not think that our rock and roll band sounds very much like Doc Holliday? Stephen, you familiar with Doc Holliday?
I'm not really, no, so I don't really know.
Peter, you're familiar. Do you not
Yes.
think it
a little bit? I actually find, I think Steven hit it on the head, that there's some of this album that almost sounds Southern rockish in spots, but like the more AOR version of Southern rock, right? There's a little bit of like Doc Holliday 38 Special going on here. There is a little bit of, you mentioned Bob Seger, there's a little bit of that going on here. There's a little bit of Foghat going on here. There's a little bit of Status Quo going on here too, God damn it. I mean, it's like this album is, I guess it's my turn now, right? So it's
I spoke long enough.
Just before you go, Peter, can I just speak to our American friends?
Yes.
Smokey were a band from Bradford who had hits in the UK in the 1970s. Dennis Waterman sang all the songs for everything he was ever in.
Yes, he was an actor, and it seemed to be in his contract that if he acted in whether it be a comedy, a cop drama, or a kind of rough and tumble, whatever you want to call Minder, he had to sing the theme tune. I Could Be So Good For You was a theme tune of Minder. And it's standard stuff, I may add.
Well,
And
thank you.
he's-
Jack.
he's-
I didn't know that
he's
either.
the-
So it's like, you know, I'm always hoping to get these little bits of.
Yeah.
the
I
fact
would suggest he's the Lee Majors of the UK. Well, he's not now because
Yes,
he's dead.
that's a perfect example. That was the
guy.
show that I was trying to think. If Dennis Waterman was writing American TV music, he would have written this album for the Fall Guy. Yes, absolutely. This is the Fall Guy on record.
Gotcha.
Fantastic. Love it. Yes. Bang. There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Done.
I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head. This stylistically, this is kind of all over the place. It kind of works. It kind of doesn't for this format. And again, it's another one of those albums, kind of like the Alias album for me. The stuff I like on this album, I really like a lot. There's some stuff that doesn't really work for me all that much, but you know what? I'll Drink to You is a terrific song. That is like your quintessential American party anthem. The chorus is great. The guitar work is great. You know, once you know the kind of whole story about why they wrote that song about their fallen bandmate who died, you know, it's just, man, it's just good stuff. Rocking in a Motel Room is catchy. It's boogies, right? I mean, there's plenty of boogie on this album. That's why I mentioned Foghat and Status Quo, because there's some stuff on here that just kind of chugs along just like that. You know, like if, you know, as much as like an American band can do boogie woogie, right? But yeah, there's some stuff I don't like on here. Like You Gotta Love the Wrong Ones. I'm not crazy about that. Don't You Look at Me Like That. That's got a great chorus. Love the guitar work on that. Sugar Blues. Love that song. Really good. Rock and Roll Band is funky. It rocks. Dig that. Don't Walk That Way. Yeah, it's derivative, but it's really cool. And I really dig Baby I Do. I think there's more kind of cool bluesy boogie on that as well. So I think this is a fun album. I agree with you. The other album that you pointed out is the more quintessential start to finish melodic rock album. But I think this album in particular would appeal to a wider variety of listeners, I think, than just the standard melodic rock crowd. So, but yeah, it's good. There's some filler on it, but otherwise, what's really good on here is really, really good. It's fun stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, now.
Okay, so this is they made an AOR album selection, and we are with a classic band here. This is Tygers of Pan Tang. And yes, okay, not that anyone pointed out on Twitter at all. I called this something else, Burning from the Inside or something along those lines at the end of last week's show. I think my 10% beer had overtaken me by that stage. But this is called...
Yeah, but you also did it on the first email as well.
Did I?
Yep.
I completely thought that's what it was called. Maybe I'm not going to give too much away. I was going to say something. I'm not going to give anything away. This is Burning in the Shade from 1987 by Tygers of Pan Tang, who were, of course, known for being, I would suggest, one of the bigger second division outfits from the Nowobaham scene. Okay. Tygers are a sort of new wave of British heavy metal for anyone not keeping up. So they formed in 1978, released their debut Wildcat 2 years later. And history probably now, I would suggest, reminds us that they brought John Sykes to everyone's notice rather than anything else about them. And that's a shame because those early albums are bang on the money. He played on their first 3 albums before heading off to join Ben Lizzy and Whitesnake and forming Blue Murder. And then I think finally what's happened is he's then locked himself in his basement by mistake because it would appear he can't get out. It would appear, I think. He seems to be able to communicate from there, but not musically. Anyway, the band split in 1982 after 4 albums, and then they resurfaced again in 1985 with only one original member still in the ranks. And that was Brian Dick on drums, although admittedly singer John Deverell had been on the band's 3 albums prior to the split. So this was some sort of a kind of regurgitated lineup, and it was completed by Dave Donaldson on bass and Steve Lamb and Neil Shepherd. And when I reviewed these albums, I did allude to the fact there's maybe a one man and his dog joke in there somewhere. There you go. That was your guitar pairing. And they did a comeback album called The Wreckage. Anyway, really clever. And one of them, thank you, one of the main sounds that you hear on that album is the keyboards of guest player Steve Thompson. Okay, and the band did take a step towards melodic rock and AOR with that album. But 2 years later, we got this album. And Donaldson was gone, as was Shepherd, and we were left with John Deverell on vocals, Steve... I
was just saying, off you go, lads. Catch you later.
Oh, sorry,
Changing the lineup.
I thought I'd been tough there. John
No,
Devlin
no,
on vocals, Steve Lamb on guitars, and Brian Dick on drums, with non-member Steve Thompson credited with keyboards, bass, and programming. And along with Devlin and Lamb, he co-wrote all of the album. It all seems a bit odd to me. One of the main driving forces of the Tygers of Pan Tang album wasn't in the band. But anyway, the album was produced by Jerry Barter. Doesn't appear to have done much else, and it was released in 1987 through Zebra Records.
Simon, turn it over to you.
Thank you. See, initially when we thought about this, you, Stephen, you said you will do the wreckage. Yes, wreckage. Then I listened around and I said, why don't we do Burning in the Shade? Because it's fucking terrible. And you agreed. You agreed, didn't you?
Yeah, I must admit. Yeah. I actually got this the wrong way around. I thought the wreckage was the rubbish one, and then I went and listened to them again. Went, that's actually okay.
Yeah, the record
It's
is
good.
not too bad.
Good.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's kind of a progression from the Cage, because they were becoming more melodic with the Cage, weren't they? You know, that was a hit. And you think, well, more of the same, thanks. But no, they took it down to this degree. And oh Christ on a bike. Sometimes going down the melodic rock route doesn't quite work. There's a reason why the current lineup of the Tygers don't go anywhere near this stuff. Am I right? Oh Jesus! Just why? What? It's a bit like, yeah, that's the Tygers. It's a bit like they thought. We'll sound like Cutting Crew, but not when Cutting Crew sound like Cannibal Corpse. You know, we'll smooth off round off Cutting Crew's rough edges, shall we? Oh fuck me, really? You know, start off and you think, oh, that's Toto-ish, but not as good. That's just that's just nowhere near as good. Hit it like hit it. It's a bit like a bad Night Flight Orchestra / Bad Europe. Occasionally, I think Devereaux's an excellent singer. He really, really is an excellent singer. You know, he's proved himself on the harder rocking shit previously, hasn't he? He really has. But you kind of have to ask why this album exists and why it went out under the name of Tygers of Pan Tang. Because it doesn't sound like the Tygers of Pan Tang. And you know, me being somewhat of a contrarian, I like to choose to think, hey, it doesn't sound like Tygers of Pan Tang, so it's my favourite. This is not my favourite. Tygers of Pan Tang. A question I've written down in my notes is, does it get better with repeated listens? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. But it just gets more familiar, doesn't it? But you know, at no point do you think, woohoo, yay. Dream Ticket, bad 80s pop, bland. Sweet Lies, not a bad song, just super bland. Can you see the word I'm looking for at this point? Bland, yeah. Maria, oh Jesus Christ, it's like Andrew Lloyd Webber. Oh, you know, and you know me, you've met me. I like, you know, Pride of Lions. I like shit, melodic rock that sounds like show tunes. I like that. This should be really in my wheelhouse, shouldn't it? It isn't. Yeah. Hideaway. Can we find a place to hide away? Yes, please, lads, do please. Just no. Open to Seduction. No. Circle of the Dance. Again, Tempest-like vocals. One of the better songs. But are you there? You think, oh, it's rock. We're rocking now. Guitars kicked in, and then they go. See you later. Yeah. You know, that said, you know, the guitar work that is on the album is really good. I like it. You know, the solos are good and nicely well constructed, but it's not the Tygers of Pan Tang. No, it just really isn't. But here's the best thing about it: it's concise. It's 37 minutes long. You can actually get it, right? You can actually get it in a super sexy little box set kind of thing. I've got it on cassette up, so you get it super sexy kind of little box set with the wreckage and the demos for both albums, which are interesting. I may never play the game, but you know, it's well worth an actual listen to how they got to where they are. But this is Tygers at their worst. If we ever do in fact, we now don't need to do a least favorite Tygers album, because this is it. This has driven me to gin and tonic beer. Cheers.
The perfect pairing.
Oh Christ, no.
Terrible
that was
beer
a
for a
sweet sign.
terrible
Never
album.
wanted to see that face, Simon. Thanks. I can't.
I'm gonna. I paid for it. I'm from Lancashire. I paid for it. I'm gonna finish it.
Oh dear. So yeah, I often think that the job of this selection on this show is to kind of highlight the albums in a catalogue that are wrongly lambasted because they don't fit in with what came before, and probably they don't fit in with what came after. And I, not really because I'm a contrarian, but just because I tend to like those albums, tend to big them up. There are a few of them that are pretty cruddy, and this may be the cruddest. This is bad. And those demos, wow. If you hear this or you've heard this and think, I'd like it a bit heavier, don't listen to the demos. Wow. Crikey. Do you know, I dislike it. We've done over the years quite a few shows where somebody will go, I don't mind that album, but they maybe shouldn't have put it out under that band name. I don't like that suggestion. If a band have gone, through years, built up an audience, and they feel brave enough to take that audience with them when they kind of take a left turn, well, that's brave. It might be stupid. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. However, when a band completely splits up, and then a few years later, the drummer, now, I used to play the drums, nothing against drummers, but when the drummer gets together with the singer and a bunch of, for want of a better turn of phrase, other folk, okay, and they go down a completely different musical path, well, that ain't the band that we had before, is it? It's really not.
Right.
So I don't care how we got here and who owned what and all this kind of stuff, because now we've got members that were in the band prior to this that now use the name. Thank you. This wasn't Tygers or Pan Tang. It's absolutely bizarre that this comes out under that name. Do you know? To be fair, The Wreckage is a decent stab at this style of music. I quite like that album. It has a fair bit to recommend. But I struggle to even call this a rock album. I mean, I know this is AOR stroke melodic rock because we do talk about a broad church here. I need a bit more kind of guitars. I mean, this makes the Alias album sound like, I don't know, Venom. It's just, it's so lightweight. It's unbelievable. I mean, Maria, yes, it's like some sort of West End musical performed by Spandau Ballet. It's just
even I wasn't that much.
Yeah, well, it's not good. Do you know? I mean, there are tracks here where the guitars make no difference unless there's a solo, and some of the solos are great. That's the thing. Some of the solos are absolutely brilliant. It's bizarre that they've clearly got in Steve Lamb a guitarist that can play, and somebody has decided that he should still be sitting with John Sykes in his basement, not getting heard from. It's very bizarre. It's really, really strange that that's the way that they've decided to go. I mean, Hideaway, I don't think that's awful in comparison to some of the stuff on this, but I can imagine if anyone remembered the band King, that's the sort of thing they were doing on Top of the Pops in kind of pastel-coloured suits with the sleeves rolled up. And I believe that's even the look they were going for on the front of The Wreckage, if you want to hold that up. I think I've got that behind me too. There you go. It feels very much like they were actually trying to move into that kind of new romantic sort of thing. It's just all...
What about the back of this one, though? That's just...
It's just really bad. So I don't mind the one and only. That's what opens the albums. But to me, there's very little doubt that if there was a kind of Luxembourg entrant for the Eurovision Song Contest in 1983, this was it. It's all about kind of showing your teeth and swishing your hair. It's that kind of cheerfulness that makes you go, yeah, don't do that. It's just so disingenuous. Do you know, it's really bad. Yeah, so I apologise. I know that there are people that genuinely like this album. I think it's really bad. I think it's really bad. Really bad. It's not.
You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like one of those bands that appears in something like say Magnum PI or some police procedural where something's gone wrong, and at the end they sing their song. You know, once the crime's been solved, it sounds like one of those kind of things. You know,
Yeah,
like
that fictional band where the singer maybe cut his finger and Magnum's got to come and investigate who put the sharp thing there, and at the end,
exactly.
yeah,
And then they're there while the key protagonists in the text have a beer and stuff and go at each other whilst the band's behind, and you think, oh god, that's shit. So yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like to me. It's like the oral equivalent of gin beer.
So yeah, I mean, I hate to like say this about a band I really like a lot, but I'll tell you a little secret, everybody. Come in close. This album blows. It's not good. It's not good. And I, you know, you guys basically said everything I would already say. And if you were to play this album to someone who really loved those early Tygers of Pan Tang albums, but maybe kind of fell off and didn't really listen to anything else past like you know, the third or fourth album, and you played them this, they would say to you, there is no fucking way that is Tygers of Pan Tang. It's like, yeah, it is, right? Yeah, it's just bland 80s pop. And you know what's really sad? Here's the sad thing. John Deverell sings really good on this album. He actually can do this kind of shit quite nicely. I think his vocals are the high point of the album. I think Steve Lamb tosses in some good guitar solos. Unfortunately, it's like you can't have a good album that has a couple of really good choruses and a couple of really good guitar solos and nothing else. There's no riffs on this album. There's you know, for a guy who's not even a full-time member of the band, what's his Thompson, right?
Steve Thompson, yeah.
This is his album.
Yeah.
It's just all synthesizers and these wishy-washy bland arrangements, and it's just like, my God. I mean, Maria, holy cow, boring synth pop, right? It's like I couldn't be more bored listening to that. You know, every now and then you get a little bit of guitar crunch and you know, a nice little, you know, God, I Open the Seduction. There's some crunch going on there from time to time, whatever. Circle of the Dance is kind of catchy, but man, does this album not rock much at all. It's just, you know, is it well produced? Does it sound all bright and shiny? Yeah. But is this a Tygers of Pan Tang album? No. You know, I think the only song on here to me that has any sort of a fucking pulse is Hit. Hit It's got these really cool, nasty, snarling guitar licks. Yeah, there's a lot of synths going on there, but I think that was the kind of direction they could have done with this album. Unfortunately, you know, the only one, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good song. But man, the rest of this album, it's just lightweight, boring 80s pop. This is not new wave of British heavy metal. There's no heavy metal happening anywhere here, folks. Anywhere. So if you're a fan of Tygers of Pan Tang, the early albums, and you know, maybe you've been hearing a lot of really good things about their more recent albums, and you should investigate their more recent albums because they're really, really good. And you want to kind of investigate some of the stuff you've missed, take that detour starting in 1987, move right past this one. Don't stop at the red light and keep going. If you get a ticket, well, that's your problem. But don't stop at this one. There's nothing to hear here. So yeah, 2 thumbs down.
So with a unanimous 2 thumbs down across the board, the first time that has ever happened, it definitely narrows the field down when I say, Simon, if you had to take one of these 3, let's be kind, one of these 3 albums and say that's the one that you could keep out of these 3, you cannot have the other 2, which album are you going to choose?
Oh, well, I have had the Alias album for 30 odd years, so I'm probably going to choose the Duke. I've totally loved the Duke over the last few months. I really have, very much so. But like I said, really dig the Alias album as well. I've had it a very long time, and I wouldn't want to be without it. So basically, I'm taking 2.
Okay, even in the show, we
And
can't
yet,
really.
yet I've got this one. This is going with Led Zeppelin 4. Are we ready, kids?
Turn the heat back on so we can sit right next to the radiator and melt all over the place, right? Yeah.
Special place on the radiator kept for it, yes. So, okay then, Peter, if you can take one of these, just the one, which one are you going to take?
I think, man, it's hard. You know what? I'm going to take one of them because of 2 songs. I think, to me personally, I like I'll Drink to You and Rockin' in a Motel Room better than anything on any of these other albums. Even though I think the Alias album might be stronger start to finish for me, I'm going to take Duke Jupiter 1 just for those 2 albums because, man, those albums just absolutely rule. So there you go.
Okay, so for me, if you're going to make me choose one, and clearly under Simon's rules, that's now optional. Okay. He's one of these people that if you do a quiz with Simon, he'll give you 3 answers, and if one's correct, he was still right. But anyway, okay.
I've never lost at a quiz.
So I have to choose the one that I've got just right here because this is the best $2.99 I've ever spent. Okay, I had never heard this album in my life until Pete suggested it, and I found this for £2.99 on Discogs. It's the best £2.99 I've spent in a long time. This is The Duke. That's what they'll be known as from now on in. This is what I'm taking. Alias, Who Are You?
I don't even. I think that's like long out of print on CD too. I don't even think you can get it on CD. I have the CD of the other one that we showed, but not that one. I was actually looking to buy that recently. I'm like, damn. I think there's a. I think they have a compilation that has a couple tracks from that album on it, but you want the whole thing, right? Fuck the
You want the whole thing. Honestly, this is a story in itself. And the journey through this album is just phenomenal. But
yeah.
Not always for the right reasons, but nearly always for the right reasons. But those flaws make it glorious. Absolutely glorious. I mean, this was the 80s. This was the 80s. Look at it. Yep. Nothing about this that says 80s on it.
Nope.
It's great.
Boy, Discogs is going to be doing some business tonight, people.
I want to know if anyone can beat my £2.99. That's what I got.
I don't think so. That's a great
price. Mayday sale.
I may have to go buy a turntable so I can go out and buy a copy.
It was so cheap that I had to buy more albums from the guy because he wouldn't sell me for send anything less than a £5.
Don't you hate that? Oh, it's like, this falls under the requirement. I'm like, come on, I don't want it.
I'll tell you, it worked because I ended up buying another 14 from him.
All righty then.
I did spend under £40 though.
Steven sold 10 albums in the last week, and then he went and bought 14 from this depending on Discogs. Right? See how that works? The curse is real, people.
Oh dear.
Oh man, we are doomed, all of us. Anyway, Steven, you want to give us a little precursor to what people can expect 2 weeks from today?
Yes, 2 weeks from today, I think this is a very, very interesting selection. This again was Peter's choice. We are ranking the songs on a classic album, and we are doing A Night at the Opera by Queen. And I've already started this process because I was like, this is going to be really, really difficult. It's a very interesting process. Really looking forward to doing that show.
Yeah, it's a very eclectic, varied album, and you have some very big classic songs on it. So it's like, yeah, it's one of the reasons why I picked this, because I think sometimes you have to either have to or you have to you agonize over, well, how do I rank a song that's like one of the biggest rock songs of all time that I've heard a million times, because some people are gonna be like, well, that's got to be number one, right?
Yeah, that's why I've got 39 at number one. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. So, right. It's like, can someone like the Prophet song more than Bohemian Rhapsody? Sure they can, right?
Of course they
can. Could they? Well, I don't know. That's what we're going to find out in 2 weeks, folks. So thanks everybody for watching. So of course you know how it goes. Your homework watching this particular video is to go listen to these three melodic rock classic unknown, and they did a melodic rock album picks that we have for today. Let us know how you would rank them, what you think of them, which one you would take to the desert island, right, if you had to only take one of them. And yeah, and I think give that Duke Jupiter album a listen. It's pretty damn good, right? It's fun.
And we could be wrong about the Tygers.
We could be totally wrong. I kind of don't think so, but we could be totally wrong. I would bet money that we're not wrong. You know what? This is interesting, because anytime that we completely like trash an album here on Sea of Tranquility, there is always at least one person, sometimes more, who will post in the comments, I can't believe you guys don't like that Tygers of Pan Tang album. That is my favorite Tygers album of all time. I would be shocked if anybody said that.
There is somebody that myself and Simon interact with on Twitter on a quite regular basis, who, without knowing that this was even coming up, mentioned the album in a positive light just the other day. And I was like,
You know what? There's a fan for everything out there, right? I mean, I got an email from someone like a year and a half ago that said, I can't believe you guys always bust on Nostradamus by Judas Priest. That is the best album they ever did. And I'm like, okay, if you think so, that's fine, because everybody hears things differently. Get the wax out of your ear, man, because how could that? Anyway, I digress. Because yeah, no, you know what? Everybody likes what they like, and that's the way it goes. But yeah, this Tygers album, woof. If we got some fans, I'd love to hear what you think is so great about this album, because the three of us just aren't hearing it. So anyway, this is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button. So everybody's assignment, not only to listen to these melodic rock gems, but in 2 weeks, rank the songs on A Night at the Opera by Queen. Get ready with your list. We'll have our list ready till then. For Simon, Bray, and Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good rest of the week, and everybody enjoy your Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening or Sunday, whenever it is you're watching this particular show. And we'll see you in 2 weeks here on the UK Connection. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.